My name is David Haig. I am the CEO of Brand Finance. We're here at the Brand Finance Global Forum to celebrate the strongest brands in the world.
On an annual basis, Brand Finance picks up a really important topic which is front and center for the debate in the field of branding, and this year's topic is extremely important, particularly given the macroeconomic conditions in the world today. Thank you again for inviting us to partner with you at this important forum which Brand Finance hosts every year.
It's a real example of how different sectors come together to represent nations. It was great to see the genuine interest from the delegates and really the depth of the questions they were asking.
The old days of sticking in your lane is no longer valid. You actually need to be a bit of a designer, a bit of an engineer, and I think designers are tremendous catalysts in a multidisciplinary group of people so that they actually develop ideas and products that work and fit a purpose. And I think that the more that groups of people like this get together to talk about that, the better.
At Brand Finance, we value brands from every country, every sector, every year, and we have a database of around 5,000 brand valuations that we create every single year.
We've just reached 2 p.m. And I believe we're ready to start our webinar this afternoon. Welcome to everybody. My name's Zoe, Events Executive at Brand Finance. Thank you for joining our second webinar of the Brand Finance Global Forum 2020 series in association with Tata Consultancy Services, where we will be exploring the topic, the value of design to customers. We are pleased to be joined by over 150 people from all around the world today. I will be shortly handing over to David Haig, CEO of Brand Finance, who will be opening today's session. Just a quick note on housekeeping. The format of the hour-long webinar today will follow 3 10-minute presentations by our guest panelists, followed by a 20-minute Q&A session. You can submit your questions to our presenters through the Q&A facility. We will be sharing a recording of the webinar after the session. We also kindly request that on leaving the webinar, you take a few moments to fill out a brief survey providing feedback that will be helpful to develop our future events in our series. And finally, I would like to encourage you all to engage with us on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook and Twitter using our hashtag BFGlobalForum. And without further ado, I'm now very pleased to hand over to David Haig to introduce today's session and our panelists. Thanks, David.
Hello. Hi. Well, I'm very pleased to welcome you all here today. I looked at the list of guests and it made me feel a bit nostalgic, really, for the physical events that we always hold every year. This is the 17th Brand Finance Forum, and it's rather sad that we can't actually mix, interact, network as usual. But I hope this will be a great substitute. We've got a very good subject this year. And as you know, we always pick something where we say understanding the value of the missing word. And we've had all sorts of things, including advertising, digital, charity, nation brands. And this year we felt that design was a very, very important topic to cover. So I'd like to thank the World Trademark Review, the Foreign Press Association, and the Museum of Brands for supporting us. And in particular, I'd like to thank Tata Consultancy Services, who have been our long-time sponsor and very supportive and helpful in this endeavour. And we've got 3 great presentations today. Rowena Kerr-Lewis, who's the managing director and co-founder of Denomination, a very specialized design firm, which looks at all aspects of design in the drinks business. Secondly, Tim Bravo, who is communications director at Bugatti, but is going to talk about the importance of design there. And finally, Andy Moore, who is our global strategy and insight director, who has a long history working for Pepsi, Mars, Vodafone, and many others, and with Brand Finance focuses on understanding how different aspects of brand management can help boost brand value. And then today he's going to focus on the design side. So with no further ado, I will hand over and we can proceed. Thank you.
No, we're now very pleased to hand over the platform to Lakshmi Srinivasan, who's going to provide a special introduction from our partners for this event.
Thank you. Thanks, David. Hello, everybody. It's great to be part of this event. Thanks to Brand Finance for partnering with us. This association has helped us to continuously benchmark against the best. We are all very proud of being recognized as the fastest growing brand in IT services over the last decade. On to the topic of design. I'm responsible for TCS Interactive, which is the experience design agency of TCS. Like to quote Steve Jobs, design is not what it looks like or how it feels. Design it how it works. For anything to work, experiences are very key. The technology has transformed the way we interact with each other, we interact with the brands. In this hyper-connected world, this has resulted in a multifold increase in the complexity of interactions and data workflows. The role of design, in my view, is primarily to absolve people of these complexities and create purposeful and awesome experiences that can deliver on the brand promise that the enterprises are holding. When the world has moved towards a digital first model, brands are prioritizing the investment on designing digital experiences, very relevant in the current pandemic context. At TCS Interactive, we have seen successful efforts essentially have two elements attached to it. One is the ability to design with a vision. A vision that aligns with the ability to create intelligent, sustainable, and inclusive world. When you're designing digital experiences, the opportunity that the brands have to convey what they stand for as a purpose, what is in the offer from the brand, and how responsible have they been in producing those offers. The amazing possibilities are possible through design. The second aspect is the agility in the design process. Now, a shared vision coupled with the ability to harmonize design, content, and technology in an agile manner would make it possible for teams to come together and realize this vision. So these two elements of designing with vision and agility in the design process is going to be critical as brands continue to innovate and engage with with the customers and the wider market. Now, as we traverse through the era of hyper-personalization, and pretty soon in a cookie-less and consent-based world of consumption, a contextual design along with an agile process is going to become very important in delivering iconic experiences. I'm very keen to hear multiple perspectives on the role and value of design. I look forward to the session, to the great panelists that we actually have. To get us started, let me introduce Rowena Kurlowis, CEO and co-founder at Denomination. Over to you, Rowena.
Thanks, Lakshmi. Good afternoon, everyone. Today, I'm going to be discussing the value of design to consumers, but I'm going to be doing it through the lens of the drinks category. Now, the reason being, I am the co-founder of Denomination, as David introduced me, and we're a design agency that specializes primarily in the drinks in the drink sector, from wine, beer, spirits, and cider. So drinks is a specialist category where consumers behave differently to say they do in the FMCG market, like toilet paper or bread. And I think everyone's experienced, if you're walking into an off-license or a specialist store like Majestic, you are faced with this overwhelming, enormous range of different products to choose from. So how do you choose? What factors run through consumers' minds? Well, we know that through many research studies that packaging plays a significant role in their purchase decision. So let's look at why design is so valuable to consumers in the drinks category. Well, firstly, their choice is often a reflective of self and what their value system is. So when our client Fourth Wave Wines came to us to design a new generation wine for a new generation, we looked at the values of Gen Z and millennial consumers and focused on two core value chains. The first one is environmental sensitivity and sustainability, and the second was wines that tapped into health and well-being concerns. Now, this means, from a wine context, wine that is sustainably produced, that has minimal preservatives, that has is naturally lower in wine and therefore better for you. This was the design that we came up with, a brand called Tread Softly. And it's a very daring, restrained approach with a design aesthetic that really complements the brand premise and name. And you can see that using this beautiful flecked, uncoated paper on the front label is not only sort of nature friendly, but its artwork is really discreet and encourages you as a consumer to lean in and take a closer look. However, if you turn the bottle around, you'll find really dramatic sensual images of flora and fauna, and those signify the wine's sophisticated flavor profile. If you look at those eye-catching images, they're repeated again on the capsule, and that really helps boost shelf standout and allow for that more minimalist approach on the front label. We've chosen a lightweight bottle and a recycled paper choice to reaffirm the consumer's environmental values. Secondly, for consumers, their choice represents what we call social currency, how others will think of them and how they would like to be seen. So remember the last time that you were at a dinner party. I'm sorry that lots of you in the UK won't be there at the moment, but you're placing a bottle of your choice on a table with your peers, your family, your friends, your neighbours, your colleagues, whoever. And the choice that you make is going to be dependent on the company you keep and the subliminal messages that you as a consumer want to convey. Now, I think this is beautifully summed up in this quote by Euromonitor, where they see brands as an extension of themselves. And what's different these days is they actually want to project what they care about to others. So say you really are into supporting diversity. Well, from the only Black-owned state in Napa Valley, here is the design that really celebrates the core house of brand ethos, and that is that wine and inclusivity go hand in hand. So in order to do this, we came up with this beautiful collage of different people from different races and ethnicities to form this universal whole. And the profile is surrounded by lovely imagery of flowers that signify those flavor notes that you would expect to detect in a particular wine, in this case, a Chardonnay. And the capsule amplifies the inclusivity of the USP of this brand with the word welcome. Say you're environmentally conscious and you want to make sure that everyone knows that. Well, these brands by Johnny Walker and by Carlsberg are a clear look at me moment when you as the consumer bring them to the party. Maybe you want to project this sense of I am supremely confident. Well, here's a design that is so pure it requires no words, that it's a message regarding the wine's creation that only those in the know would actually understand. Perhaps you just want to project that you've got a great sense of humor. So here's an irreverent, engaging design that's based on the distiller's testing out his various experimental techniques on his dinner parties. This is actually all true, by the way. And this wonderful design really makes sure that that consumers know, your friends and colleagues know that you have an equally crazy sense of humour. And you can go on for ages. Thirdly, there is this emotional connection to a label, something that encourages a deeper level of engagement. And connecting emotionally is what all good designers and advertisers try to do with every label or ad campaign that they produce. Now, a ton of research has gone on around the world that on the influence of emotions when you evaluate a brand and make decisions. And neuroimagery shows that the primary evaluation tools that a consumer uses are personal feelings rather than facts and attributes. So the success of augmented reality, or AR, when you integrate that into a brand design, is yet another device in the design toolkit that that we utilize in order to get this deeper level of engagement with consumer. Now, we've seen this with great success on brands like 19 Crimes. And similarly, this is a design for Botanicus, for the Chinese market, really bring to life the natural qualities of this wine. Is that video playing? And finally, there's the ability for designs to be distinctive enough to be able to break through the competitive clutter and obviously jump off the shelf visually. This is obviously, and you saw those in the photograph of Majestic, a really notoriously difficult exercise, but we have many levers in design to ensure that happens. So there's color, typography, imagery, language, and all of those can deliver a distinct competitive advantage. So this is a distinctive assets model that we have derived from Byron Sharp's work in his theory of how brands grow, where the repeated use of a brand's distinctive assets in design enables consumers to recognize their brand of choice and ultimately allows them to switch from Kahneman's System 2 to System 1 mode of thinking. And when this happens, that quick recognition of the brand means for consumers it's a safer and better choice. So creating distinctive memory structures really helps drive, creating distinctive memory structures through design really helps that ease of choice for consumers. And you can see there those very easily recognizable signs even without everything that goes around them. Design is also a creative experience. The pouring of a glass of aged tawny from these enormous Graham's port bottles, they're actually 4.5 litres big, into this tiny glass relies on the physical strength and the precision of the wait staff. So there's this fantastic theatre that's created about around the combination of the physical design of the bottle and the physical strength of the pourer. Similarly, with the Penfolds ampoule that we design, it's the opening that creates the magic. So if you're one of the lucky 10 purchasers of this £100,000 wine, it's housed in a glass sculpture, you will have a senior Penfolds winemaker fly to the venue of your choice and break open the ampoule using this specially designed tungsten tipped sterling silver instrument that we call a scribe snap. And that sort of service on top of the quality of the ampoule and its rarity value goes a good way to explain the £100,000 price. Now, although this is probably somewhat debatable for some, certainly not debatable for me, buying drinks is actually an indulgence, not a necessity. So whatever price point you are, the drinks brand that you buy needs to provide you with an inner sense of satisfaction and pleasure. Design is a pathway to enabling this. So when you get to that point of buying a drinks brand for an emotive gain, price is no longer the driving factor. It's actually influenced by far greater driving forces that allow businesses to exchange a price premium for emotional benefits that consumer is deriving from their brand choice. And so the value of design for consumers is actually the value of design for businesses. Design is a great enabler for bigger margins and profit. And here are a couple of proof points. Here is a Devil's Lair design, a before and after. You can see fairly minimal change, but an increase of branding and premium cues, as well as consistency of distinctive assets, and some phenomenal results for them. If you look at the blue line, that is a packaging change, and you can see what happened, especially to the Chardonnay, and then followed by the Cabernet later on. Robert Oatley, a revolutionary design this time, and you can see there it's a DBA Design Effectiveness Award winner, an incredible increase in just 2 years without any additional A&P spend. Four Winds, a small winery who completely redesigned their pack to this, who achieved some incredible results and it revolutionized their family business, also resulting in another DBA Design Effectiveness Gold. And so the result of the value that consumers place on design means that businesses, in turn, can experience a windfall. So thank you very much. And I'd now like to introduce Tim Bravo, who's the Head of Communications at Ducati.
Thank you, Rowena. I have to say I'm a bit thirsty now after seeing those delicious wines. No, seriously, thank you, Brand Finance, for having me. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I'm Tim Bravo. I'm the Head of Communications of Bugatti, and for the next 10 minutes, I'm going to talk a little bit about the importance of design for our customers and communications, because obviously I'm not a designer, but I have to make sure that the design and its importance is understood outside of Bugatti, in the outside world, among customers, enthusiasts, and especially journalists. So let me, before I talk about the present and maybe a little bit about how it's going to go into the future, let me start with the past, because in order to understand Bugatti and its design, you have to really know a little bit about its roots. So this is the Bugatti family, starting from left to right. This is Carlo Bugatti, the father of Ettore, who founded Bugatti Automobile. After him, Rembrandt Bugatti, the brother of Ettore, an artist, a sculptor, while Carlo Bugatti was an architect and interior designer, Rembrandt a sculptor. Ettore also started working in studying in an art school, but he went for engineering since his brother Rembrandt had clearly more talent than him, according to himself. And then his son, Jean Bugatti. So it's this is just an excerpt of the family, but it's really truly a family of Italian roots, but a family full of artists. We'll go to the next chart. You see that this translated as well in the design of its cars from the very early beginnings. This is the Type 35 that we see, the most successful race car in history, winning over 2,000 races. And the success, or the secret of the success, was a reduction to the really strictly necessary. So this was a mechanical purity that we see in this car, from inside to the outside, is comparable to maybe an iPhone nowadays from design point of view. So this is an early sign of our credo, which is form follows performance. This is very important. I'll come to that later. Let's go to the next chart. We see that Jean, the son of Ettore Bugatti, was really known as Jean the Stylist. He changed the game for Bugatti in terms of design, because while Ettore Bugatti, as I just explained, was looking into the mechanical purity and beauty of the car, of the mechanics working inside below the hood. Go to the next chart. He still had a very, on the next chart we see, yeah, he still had a very traditional understanding of design. So back then it was coach building. So he built the car, the rolling chassis, and then coach builders put the hood on it and made it a good looking car, a good looking design. While Jean, as we see on the next slide, he didn't do coach building work anymore. He was a true designer already. Although he had never learned design, he had a natural talent for proportions, in addition to the mechanics. And he created beauties like the Type 57. On the next chart, we see the most, oh, this is out, sorry. I missed one chart, I think. Jean Bugatti had created this Type 57, and its most beautiful form was the Atlantique, not seen here, which is considered today to be the most expensive car. If it was ever to be sold, only 3 cars of this type remain in existence, or 4 built. On the next chart, this Type 57 also was then was not only beautiful, but it could be adapted to again a race car. This is the last car that won the 24 Hours of Le Mans, the legendary race here in France for Bugatti before World War II. Then Bugatti disappeared for many years until it was after World War II, until it was resurrected in Italy, in Campogalliano. On the next chart, you see briefly just a reference. Oh, sorry, this was the Atlantique. I had the order wrong. Forgot the next chart. We see the EB 110. So this was the only Bugatti built outside of Molsheim in Alsace, France. The EB 110 built in Italy. And then on the next chart, we see that when the Volkswagen Group bought Bugatti in the late 90s, in 1998, it created a concept that put together all the characteristics of the cars that I just talked about. So of the nimble, light and nimble Type 35 that won so many races, of the big coach-built limousines that Ettore Bugatti had created, so the luxury aspect of it. And then as well, the beauty and elegance of the Type 57 of Jean Bugatti. It all put that together to create a car, first the Veyron and now the Bugatti Chiron that we see here on these pictures, that combines the characteristics of being a beauty and a beast. Because the briefing to build these cars was that they had to be powerful. They had to be as fast an acceleration they had to have as a Formula One car. They had to have a top speed of over 400, more than 1,000 horsepower for the first time in automotive history. But they had to be beautiful enough and elegant enough to go to the opera. So the design was very relevant, but in order to achieve this character of a beast, of a true beast, this power, this raw power, you have to have a design, again, that, as in the early days, follows the performance. So it has to help the performance of the car. If we move on with our very talented designers, they have created over the last 15 years, since the start of the Bugatti Veyron, beautiful, unique masterpieces that many of our clients don't even want to drive. They're pieces of art that stand in the garage as if it was a museum. Unique pieces, unique designs, sometimes brand associated co-creations, like with Hermes. There's one Veyron and one Chiron created together with Hermes, but also with other famous design brands. If we go on. Always following, as I said, our credo of form following performance, and our DNA that you find from the early, very early cars until today. So the design helps here to build the storyline from the beginning to today, with this C line, the C-shaped Bugatti line, or in front of the car and the grille, the horseshoe, the typical horseshoe from Bugatti. Moving on. We see that also materiality and quality is of utmost importance for our clients. So in this case, design and the performance aspect merge, because we have to use the most lightweight designs that have to be able to be put into the most elegant shapes. So this is always a duality that our designers and engineers have to create together, have to work very hard to get there, to achieve the highest quality, but also the highest elegance and the highest performance. If we move to the next chart, this means for our clients, here we see the traditional Bugatti blue, the French racing blue that is famous in our history and for our brand, that our customers then can go on and really configure their car to their needs. So everything you see, they can adapt to their wishes, when it doesn't touch, of course, the mechanical abilities of the car, because this is a homologated car with a very high power output that cannot be modified in that aspect that easily. But everything to the design point of view has to be able to be adapted to the individual wishes of any of our customers. And to the last chart, if you allow me here to show again, like this is a line from the early days to today in sketches. You see the horseshoe in the front, but also the center line that is accentuated, that always is a design line from the front until the back of the car. And this, our customers really value in the brand, that you see a long tradition of 111 years now, even with a period of a break in the 50s, 60s, 70s. you see that Bugatti honors its tradition, but it's not looking backwards. It's always looking forward. It always thinks of how to bring the design language as well as the innovations to the next level, always being the pinnacle of the automotive industry. And our customers value this very much, having one of the most beautiful cars in their collection, being the crown jewel of their collection in terms of new cars. The most expensive car for sure that they have is mostly a Bugatti, but a car that is not just beautiful for the sake of being beautiful, but where the design follows these, if you allow me to summarize maybe these two main characteristics. One is the homage to the history, so translating the historic approach throughout the ages, throughout these 111 years to today and to the future, but as well to support and carry really some of the technological aspects of the car, the airflow, aerodynamics, the cooling aspects. This is very much design led together with the engineers. They have to come up with very innovative solutions in order to make sure that this car does not overheat when it runs at speeds of well over 400 kilometers an hour. So this is for now my presentation in terms of design and the importance of our credo: form follows performance for Bugatti. And I'm available, of course, later to answer your questions. For now, I hand over to Andy Moore of Brand Finance. Thank you for listening.
Well, thank you, Tim. Very, very interesting, as was Rowena's talk. I'm Andy Moore. I'm the Insight Director here at Brand Finance. I've been working here, as I think David said earlier, for about the last 7 years or so. And what I'm going to do is pick up the theme of the value of design to customers from more of a customer insight point of view, with a particular focus on customer experience. In order to assess the value of design, however, we've got to first of all think about what we actually mean by value, which is a very sort of much misused word with many definitions and often confused, particularly by non-marketers, with low price. So I thought I'd introduce you to my personal definition, which I first started working with at Vodafone about a decade ago. But at least I find a useful model. Works pretty well with service brands, but is applicable to all. So ultimately, value comes from brands giving you what you want, either consciously or subconsciously, or helping you to do what you want. And that what I get can be sort of unpacked into an emotional set of values, how it makes you feel, and also what it enables you to do, a more sort of functional set of values. And I would argue that customers usually have some kind of expectation of a brand, of what they're going to get for the price that they pay, which is their expected value. But quite often that gets undermined by things that might be termed detractors, things that undermine that expected value. And examples of those would be things like either billing problems, for example, that might get in the way, or on a website excluding a contact number, which has been a particular problem for me recently when I was trying to get money back out of BA in terms of cancelled flights from the pandemic. So things like that are slightly irritating and begin to undermine value. And design has a key role to play in providing that value. Now, the focus in design discussions often starts off with logos and the visual aspects of design, but of course, as we know, design goes way beyond that into different products and services and experiences. Some examples here across those different categories where design is playing a key role, sort of classic Swiss Army knife, right through to the very impressive new Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. And as I think Lakshmi said earlier, from a customer point of view, something is only really a good design, however, if the product or service is ultimately sort of valued highly by its end users. So I wanted to give you a simple product example. This is a favorite product of mine. I've got a little pot of it here, actually. Coleman's English Mustard. It's a classic brand founded in 1814, owned in more recent years by Unilever. Historically, if you go way back when, it existed only in a powder form, which required mixing, and you can still use it that way in cooking. But over the years, it moved into a glass jar, and more recently into an inverted sort of squeezable plastic pot. And for me, it's a great, simple example of packed design innovation, driving sort of ease of use, frequency of use, probably widening the number of usage occasions, whilst at the same time maintaining that visual recognition of the brand and maintaining that standout on shelf. So looking at it in a bit more detail through that sort of customer value lens I mentioned a moment ago, it's fairly straightforward as to what the customer gets here. On the one hand, the design is delivering emotional benefits through all those historical associations, the brand cues, the yellow color. There's a bull on that logo. You probably can't see it very easily, but it's always been there. It's a traditional element of this design, and it's referencing back to the strong tradition. At a more functional level, this pack gives you portion control. It saves time through ease of dispensation, and it's a clear reminder of the strong flavor that you're getting inside, particularly signaled by that strong color. And as in many sort of product brand examples, there are relatively few detractors from the relatively clear-cut core proposition. That's provided you like the flavor, of course. And the only one I can really identify is that it might be a bit hard to get the last bit out of the pack. So that's a product example, but let's now look at an experience brand example and apply the same approach. So here's EasyJet. Here you've got a clear brand promise of simplicity and freedom, but there are one or two detractors that impact upon the perception of the actual true customer value that's achieved. So at an emotional level, customers of EasyJet get the freedom to travel, the sense of possibility, sense of belonging to this modern generation EasyJet, as EasyJet have badged it, and a sort of a quite energetic sort of vibe from that. Functionally, you've got a wide range of destinations, you've got the ease of online booking, the general simplicity of the proposition, the large number of routes you're flying to, and so on. So functionally, the brand is standing out through those things. The distinctive and recognizable colors make it actually easier to spot through the physical customer journey, whether that's on a search engine or as you're progressing through an airport. So all in all, a pretty strong proposition. And on top of that, the logo provides a clear linkage to the Easy umbrella brand that operates across a number of different categories. So far, so good. But you can, when you dig a bit deeper, find some detractors that are reducing that perceived value. For example, the charging for bags, even if you're fractionally overweight, it costs you more at the airport than it does if you book that weight online. But as you don't know exactly what weight you're going to want before you proceed to the airport, that can be a bit frustrating. And when you're booking a flight online, when you want to simply and quickly book a flight to the destination for that stag do or that weekend away or whatever it might be, there is a slightly tedious sort of booking process where flexibility is provided, but that's trading off with simplicity. So here you begin to see some detractors and some things that are slightly weakening perhaps the true perceived customer value that's put forward in that proposition. So some weaknesses from a consumer point of view. Let's take another brand. Let's take, in this case, a very well-designed proposition, I would argue, and a very strong customer experience with very few things to detract from it, Netflix. So here you've got a logo that's evocative of the cinema screen. You've got that widescreen look, that reddish warm color, the feeling of coziness and warmth. And you can kind of get from this the benefits of staying at home to watch something, staying in with friends or family. Functionally, very wide range of content. It's a very easy charging model. Multiple people within the same household can participate in the account. And there are very, very few detractors from this, in my opinion. You might not find exactly the content that you want, but overall it's a pretty strong proposition and provides a customer value that's in line with what people are expecting from it. So much for experiences and services that work well. Going back into a bit of my history, working back at Vodafone over the years, but I'm talking more generally about the sector. Telcos has always been a sector where process design improvement is really important in order to avoid an excessive amount of negative detractant from the true value. If you take this sector and if you follow a typical kind of journey mapping approach, which is what this slide here is based on, it might look something like this. This could be for any telcos brand. It's not a specific named one here. And generally the problems tend to occur in a number of areas, things like lack of coordination between the different functional areas. So you walk into a retail store and they're not able to reference the conversation you had in the contact center 2 days earlier. There's a tendency to push people very much towards a lot of self-service online. It's not that people don't want to self-serve, but if they can't resolve the problems online, they want to be able to make sure they've got some kind of human intervention. Usually what happens in telcos is that problems start with something like a billing or technical issue, but those problems turn into problems of complaint resolution where people can't find their way through the system. So can innovative technology solve these sorts of issues? Well, what we're seeing is that artificial intelligence is playing a very big part. According to Salesforce survey, the percentage of US service organizations who are expecting to use chatbots for customer contact will more than double from April 2019 to the end of this year, 23% to 56%. And of course, there are lots and lots of benefits there through the use of chatbots in terms of reducing wait times for conflict resolution or problem resolution. The customer feeling they are at least making some progress, and they're very, very efficient from a company point of view. But of course, again, they need to be able to provide that human dimension, that human nuance. And if you recall from a few years back, that sort of backlash against IVRs, voice recognition systems, was a good example of where businesses' desire to automate went a bit further than the customer desire for human understanding. Sometimes more incremental improvements can be the most effective way to make technology progress. And this is one of my favorite examples here. This has won various customer experience awards. The Hertz fast lane exit, the basic problem here was that Gold Plus Rewards members had bypassed the queues to pick up their paperwork, picked up their cars very quickly, but getting out of the car park was dependent on a slower manual process where they had to show licenses and prove identification. And that reduced their satisfaction versus what they were expecting to get. And by developing a facial recognition technology for this group of customers, Hertz were able to reduce the exit time at the gate from an average of 90 seconds to an average of 16 seconds, with a consequent rise in the Net Promoter Score for that part of the journey. And it's a great example of technology solving a niggling problem, but for some very high value and important loyal customers who clearly valued speed of transition in the first place, or they wouldn't have signed up for the service. So really improving the customer experience along that customer journey. An important aspect of creating value is, of course, alignment to the brand. And I just want to go back to the airlines example. I've already talked about the EasyJet booking process, where a bit too much disaggregation could detract from that brand promise of making getting away just simple. In the case of BA, long before the pandemic, a lot of cost-cutting initiatives have been undertaken there. But when you start not even providing free water or an economy short haul, and yet try to maintain a premium positioning, there is a conflict between those two things. And I would argue that reducing that service experience to that level is ultimately value reducing. And by contrast, Qatar Airlines more recently have launched their Q Suite cabin, which provides a very aspirational business class cabin that helps to differentiate the brand as a whole. So these examples remind us that customer experience design really does influence delivery of the brand promise significantly, and the two things need to be married together. So just trying to wrap up now, how can we best identify what improvements or changes are needed to customer experience design? I think this is quite an interesting sort of philosophical thing here, because traditionally marketing and business have tried to steer customers to outcomes that lead to desirable behaviors for the company. And of course, one is still wanting to do that, what we would like customers to do. But in an era where the power lies very much with the customer, I think it's increasingly necessary to listen first to the customer and work with the grain of customer desires. Too much focus just on changing behavior forces customers to do things they don't really want to do, signing long contracts, buying bundle elements that they don't really want or need. And ultimately that leads to emotional dissatisfaction with the relationship with the company. So I would argue it's better to adjust the propositions and the corporate behavior to deliver better on the wants and needs and expectations of those customers in the first place. And that's what ultimately builds affinity and identification with the brand. And I've just listed here sort of the key approach to widening that zone of mutual value, where what customers want to do and what we would like to do overlaps, because that's where value is created. I think it's about listening carefully to consumer signals coming from research and voice of the customer programs. They tend to identify things that need to be addressed. Very important to fix the basics first, get rid of those value detractors from the equation I was talking about earlier. Often it's, incremental improvements are often easier, and focusing first on what customers want to do, and not just innovating for technology's sake. It's all about ultimately aligning to the functional, emotional values of those brands. So in summary, If it goes to the last slide. The brandscape is sort of infinitely varied. I mean, each brand is different, is the point I really wanted to make here. Here at Brand Finance, we work with many hundreds of brands each year, and it's always a source of great fascination and interest to me that that each one is so different in its essence and its origin, its competitive situation, etc. And that means that the design challenges that need to be solved are also equally varied. So look forward to, from a brand finance perspective, discussing those with you and addressing some of those challenges in the years ahead. Thanks for listening, and I will hand you back to Zoe.
Thank you very much, Andy. And I just want to take the opportunity to thank all our speakers today. And of course, now we'd like to provide all our participants with a chance to participate in a Q&A with all of our panelists. To moderate today's session, I'm pleased to introduce Alex Haig, who's Director at Brand Finance. Alex, please, can we start with the first question?
Hi there. Thanks for the introduction, Zoe, and thanks for everyone for attending, and thanks so far to the speakers for their contributions. So today we've got a couple of questions that are that were given to us before the event, and obviously we'll have some questions coming through the Q&A here. I recommend everyone to put in their questions so that as soon as possible, so that we can include them. But the first question that I've got is to the whole panel. It is, can the panel think of any brands, particularly retail, CPG and distribution companies, that have adapted to the new normal particularly well by leveraging great design to accomplish their goals? I don't know who wants to start. Does anyone want to put their hand up, or if not, Tim Bravo, since you're next to me in the video.
Well, no, I can't think of any brand now in particular that comes to my mind. But I think it's obvious that if I talk, for example, about the car industry, if you look at the future, talking about that, is electrification is the big elephant in the room, especially for the hypercar segment, because then an electric engine doesn't offer the differentiations anymore that internal combustion engines offer. We now have a W16 8-liter capacity engine that is unique on the market. If we now were to put an electric engine inside, there was an engine with batteries that in theory anyone could have. So what is the distinction then in your car? And that's certainly then the design that is even more important in the future than it is already as it is. So I think not only in the car industry, but in general, the design is the most obvious form of individualization, of personalization, and the first thing that comes that speaks to you, speaks to your eye. So it's of the utmost relevance. And even though I can't now think of top of my head of a certain example, I think it's very obvious to all of us how important that is moving forward.
Yeah, I agree. I think from the drinks perspective, the COVID has seen this real development of community and people wanting to look after each other, and we've seen a lot of very fast new product development that's happened by Brewdog and Camden Beer, wanting to help the NHS and help Black Lives Matters, and so actually brands through design have taken on this community well-being or fundraising activity as a response to COVID.
Alex, I'm sure people might have observed this, but the McDonald's and the two fries separating for social distancing, a subtle way of using your brand in order to convey the message. So we have seen some very, very creative ways of how the brands have been supporting and addressing. That's on one side from a brand visual identity perspective, how you could appeal. We've also seen tremendous innovation in looking at leveraging the digital first channels. So the let's say automotive dealerships, big OEMs suddenly are forced with the possibility of bringing everything that you would recreate within your dealership experience, right? So how can you immerse the customer with the choices that they have to drilling down on a specific, let's say a model of an automobile, to orchestrating the whole experience from the time they decide to explore to the time they decide to actually buy. So we're seeing some incredible opportunities to do this, and you will see these experiences coming out very soon.
I think if I could just another perspective on in relation to this question, I think that very early on in the pandemic, a lot of brands started out by resorting to sort of general communications, suggesting that they were somehow empathizing, and I think they quickly realized that that wasn't actually being received necessarily particularly well, and was a bit generic, and people were suddenly being contacted by brands they'd had contact with a year or two ago and not dealt with since. And then I think companies began to realize they needed to actually start addressing real issues, and obviously lots and lots of businesses re-engineered what they did. I can't think of a brand example right there, but lots of local businesses re-engineered their offers to help with that. There were some brands that were already very well placed to and had processes that were already working well. So the sort of the Amazons of this world were already very well aligned to the changing needs of the consumer during the pandemic, and have been able to sort of benefit from that. So I think there are lots and lots of there's a lot of impetus to re-engineering and redesigning processes which the pandemic has generated.
Thanks. So the next question comes from the audience, and I think I'll take this opportunity to combine two questions actually. So the main part of this question is, how did the parameters change between sectors? How do they vary in importance? And I'm combining this with the final question that we have here about how we've spoken mostly about tangible products and not so much about services. So if you could speak to some respect about the differences in design needs between service brands and product brands. Maybe Lakshmi, would you like to start?
Oh yes, absolutely. So I think it's a great example. When we started off by looking at beverages and how the visual design, the brand design of the products can actually make a big impact in terms of the emotional connect that Andy spoke about. And then we saw the industrial design, automobiles, who doesn't love it? And there's a lot of emotion that comes out with this aspect of it. So just going back to the point that I made, these are great. Customers do choose, based on how it actually looks and how it feels. But more importantly, the brand affinity comes when it starts to work. That goes back to the point that Andy made on the detractors or detractions or the experience challenges, which could very well completely come and hinder in the way of how a product actually works. So service design is all about how the product or service is going to be consumed, and it needs to take into account the interface, which is how it perhaps interfaces with the customer, plus the things that are hidden behind, as a service blueprint. When you call up a contact center and have a conversation about a product, there is a lot more that needs to happen behind, and not just in that interaction, that you're actually designing, right? So the two elements to look beyond in a service design, what would be an experience design, which is how the interaction takes place, whether it's with a product or a service, and then what goes behind. How are you designing the entire service to be able to orchestrate and provide that experience?
If I can talk about my perspective, maybe, or the Bugatti perspective. So talking about product-oriented companies, also they have services that they have to design. So it's not just completely service-oriented companies that have to look into other types of design, but we have, let's say, a homepage, a car configurator. All of those are services as well that have to be designed in a way that is suitable for the use of the consumer. It has to be simple and lead to the needs, but also visually attractive. So I think this is important, no matter which company you're looking into, to not just concentrate on the pure product, if it is a physical product, but in general about the design and the processes of the entire company. And as to the other part of your question, Alex, was about the gender. So I think that of course there are always stereotypes that exist, especially Bugatti is a brand mainly male as the clientele. So we have with a majority of male clients, male customers. But I don't like, I think as a society, luckily we're moving away from these cliches, from stereotypes, and really getting closer to the gender equality. And you see that as well in the consumer. So I have seen many in the car industry, many women that are much better drivers than many of the male customers, and are race drivers fascinated of the technology and would look first into that. And then you have men that want to match the color of the car to the color of their shoes. So this is something that is you find everything, and that's the beauty of it. But I think, yeah, if you want to look for stereotypes, you will still find them, because we're not there yet in terms of like really equality and in terms of also our behaviors. But I think that you find everything in both genders, and that's the beauty of it. And you can't think in the future we'll not be able really to differentiate that much anymore between consumer behavior, hopefully, among the genders.
Andy, do you want to add anything,
Yeah,
Rowena?
I think probably just building on what Lakshmi was saying, I think that the difference going from a kind of the product to the service end of things is that there is, I think that generating consistency of delivery against the brand promise is maybe a bit easier at the product end. I don't want to undervalue that, because I know how difficult that is from my days working in Mars and Pepsi. PepsiCo, how difficult it is to sort of get that consistency in the manufacturing process, and to guarantee that you have things appearing on shelf in the same condition day in, day out, week in, week out. So that consistency is guaranteed in that upfront part, but thereafter there's a fairly consistent experience. I think with service brands, there are greater complexities in the delivery of the of those services and those experiences, and therefore there's often in this day and age a potential for things to go wrong, and trying to keep on top of that and avoid those things that undermine the expected value of the proposition or service. That's where some of the challenges lie. So I think that the maintaining consistency is the way I would look at it. But I do want to also, coming back to the point around emotional and functional, you know, every brand has an emotional component, and it's a little bit more obvious and easy to talk about it in terms of the kind of higher psychological levels when you're talking about, for example, alcoholic beverages, as Rowena was earlier on. I think we could all identify with that, but it's true in B2B sales and industrial products. There are emotional components to all brands, and that's one of the things which we consistently find as we dig into them in the work that we do at Brand Finance. So you know, it will vary from sector to sector, but both emotional and functional components apply across all sectors.
Perfect, thank you. Rowena, is there anything you'd like to add, or?
No, it's quite difficult for me because I don't work across sectors and certainly not in services.
Perfect. So the next question that we have is specifically related to digital, the digital design. Obviously, design is a very broad concept and a broad discipline, and encompasses various different types of design. But how do you approach digital design specifically? And this is related. This is targeted specifically at Lakshmi, but if anyone else would like to respond, that would also be great.
I think we touched briefly on the previous question. So, you know, we look at it as brand design, product design, and service design. So I think we touched upon the importance of you know, product design and service design. It's you know, how the product is actually consumed. So when it comes to digital design, and here is where the excitement that we at TCS and TCS Interactive have, because the ability for you to influence and convey the consistent brand language, to be able to make sure that when you consume every product, that the consistency that Andy spoke about can be brought. So not only from a visual perspective, but to be able to come close to the customer's actual need with which they're consuming the product or service. So it's fascinating the options that you actually have to be able to do it. And here is where technology makes a big difference. You go back to the example of what Rowena actually showed. To be able to create that beautiful video of what is behind the product, what is it actually symbolizing today, is absolutely possible through technology. And you can consistently produce the technology, whether you take your mobile phone and look at it in a shop, whether you go and browse on the web page of the product entity or owner's entity, or anywhere else the product is being sold. You can bring that consistency through it. So that's where the digital design has made a big difference in bringing some of those possibilities to the brand. I'm sure others will have comments as well.
Okay. I think now that it's 5:02, I think we've got to move on to our last question, unless anyone wants to put their hand up to add to that response. This one is coming from Jeremy Sampson, who's our managing director in South Africa. I think it's quite a nice question to wrap up on. So he's asked, how regularly should you update the design of products or services so as not to look old-fashioned? Maybe that's one for you, Rowena.
Certainly. It's how long is a piece of string? It's very much dependent on where that brand is in its journey. So often when you're looking at a heritage brand, you need to ascertain, where it's been, what the challenges are, and where you need to go in order to make it relevant to consumers today. So a brand like Penfolds, for example, which is a very well-known brand, we have worked with that brand I've worked with them for like 25 years, and we have been very slowly moving that brand on so that it doesn't have an old-fashioned perception, but rather it feels like a heritage brand, but that is relevant for consumers today. Now, it is a tough ask because at some point the brand will start looking tired, or just start to eke in. What you want to do is to make sure that you're redesigning it just before that happens, because you don't want that brand to start dipping and perceptions to change. You want to nip it in the bud beforehand. So it's about looking at where it is on its journey, where you want to go, and just tweaking it often every sort of 8 to 10 years to make sure that it feels really relevant. But actually, Andy, you had that design of Coleman's mustard there, the middle one, which was a design my husband, who's also a designer, designed probably 25 years ago, and it hasn't changed, because that brand is all about those beautiful heritage cues and the kind of quirkiness that comes from a traditional brand.
I didn't know that before this presentation, but that's very good to know. Very good to know, Rowena. But I can't really sort of add beyond what you just said, just to reinforce that if you've got something which is a heritage brand, then you obviously don't want to evolve it too fast. You've got to hang on to those heritage elements and bring them forward. So it is a how long is a piece of string question, I guess.
Yeah, it also depends a lot, as Rowena said, on the sector you're working in, because it differs very much when you talk about technology or about mechanics. It also depends on development cycles, when you can then adapt the design of a new product. Or on the other hand, like for example, in the car industry, it's a major issue, because usually the life cycles of a car model was 7 years, with maybe a facelift in the middle of it. And nowadays you can't keep those long cycles. You have to be updated much more often, because everyone just looks at the iPhone and knows that every other year he has a new one, and it looks better, it's bigger, lighter, has a better battery capacity. And this, especially talking about electric cars again in the future, Tesla is currently updated on the air. It has new colors in the interior or new features. So this it's not a whole new design of the car maybe, but you have to currently offer something new to keep people engaged and interested in this technology sector. So it depends very much on what kind of brand you are, what kind of product you have to offer, how often you have to really update your design and your processes.
Absolutely, agility is going to be key. That's going to be the big difference. Need will emerge, but how soon can you respond?
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for all of those responses, and thank you for all of your contributions. I'll now hand over to David Haig to conclude.
Hello. Hi. Well, that was a very stimulating and interesting discussion. There's so much we could talk about. We could have gone on for much longer, but thank you very much to all the contributors. It was really great. I'd just like to remind everyone who's watching that the final session of the Brand Finance Forum this year will be on the 10th of December from 2 till 3. And we started by looking at the value of design to society. Today, we've talked about the value of design to customers. And the final one will be about the value of design to business. In other words, how do you make money from all of this? And it's interesting, actually, we didn't talk much in this session today about Apple, but Apple is either the most valuable brand or one of the most valuable brands in the world. And its success has very largely been driven by design. And I think the interesting thing from a business point of view is how has that focus on design been translated into so much wealth? And I think if you look at Apple, you'll see that Jonathan Ive, who was a very, very senior guy within the organization, I think he was actually called Chief Design Officer, but he had absolute remit over everything that they did. And he and Steve Jobs were apparently deeply annoying that they would throw things out the window if they didn't actually think that they would suit customers. And they were frequently throwing things away and starting from scratch. Well, the result is that they have got products, and they've had products for 20 years that really knock the spots of everybody else in terms of user friendliness. And that's right through the system. So I think this is probably a sort of cry for a stronger design capability from cradle to grave within companies. I think sometimes the organizational structure behind design is not entirely coherent from start to finish. And those companies that get it right, like Dyson, like Porsche Design, like Apple, get outstanding business results. And on the 10th of December, we've got Deborah Dorton, we've got Denise Kirsten from Porsche, and we've got Pablo Lopez from Brands of Spain, who are all going to talk about that. How do we translate design through to financial results? So I look forward to seeing you all again then. I hope you've enjoyed this session, and see you again soon.
Thank you very much, David. And just to wrap up very finally, I know we've overrun slightly, which obviously is testament to the great discussion that we've had. Again, I think we could have continued on for an hour or so. Just thank you so much again to all our speakers for the insightful presentations today. Thank you so much for all our participants for joining. As David mentioned, please do join our webinar on the 10th of December, the value of design to businesses. I've pasted the link in the chat. So please do register if you're able to attend. And of course, all our webinars are available to view online on our Brand Finance YouTube channel. Again, I've just popped the link in the chat as well. If you'd like any further information on the topic discussed today or how to register for upcoming webinars, please email events@brandfinance.com. And finally, once again, thank you so much to everyone for joining us today, and we look forward to reconnecting with you all again soon. Thank you very much.